I just wanted to introduce everyone to Ashley Rodón. She has been great. She is the woman in charge of the Willow Grant. She also is executive director of advocacy and impact for the Nest Egg Foundation. And it's nice to finally sit down with you and talk about what we have planned for this upcoming year. But most importantly, for meeting for everyone to get to know you as a person and your journey. So super nice to have you, Ashley.
Thank
Um,
you. You?
I we've talked a lot. We've had a lot of conversations, and I'm really interested in just hearing the journey from the beginning. Like fertility is something that not a lot of people like to discuss. It is something that impacts 20% of the population, which is a significant chunk, and those numbers are rising annually. So it's cool that you have just thrown yourself into just being an advocate for this cause. And, I just love that you want to help others who have similar journeys as you and are maybe fearful of just coming out and asking for help or making it known that it's something that's important to them as well. So,
Yeah. So
I
there's a
guess,
lot of aspects to all of that. So I'll just kind of start with our journey and like why this is so important to us. When we got married, we were like, oh, we want to start a family, just like most people do. And it didn't go as planned. We got pregnant, by the grace of God. I thought, oh my goodness, like, what a blessing. This was so easy for us. And I was so sick. I remember being just deathly ill. And the trainer for my husband's team was like, oh, he like joked with me one day. He's like, that just means your baby's healthy and growing. You just got to deal with it. And I remember just laughing and being like, yeah, because once you become a mom, you're like, I will do anything for this child. So like, I'm going to puke every day. Guess that's a part of it. And we went in, it was almost 12 weeks. And I've always wanted to be a mom. So like I was looking at ultrasound photos, like this is what the baby's going to look like, all these things. And we go into the appointment. She's telling Carlos like, oh, this is what we're going to see. We're going to do the blood test today for like, you're going to get to know the gender of the baby and all of these things. And she goes over the baby and I can tell that he was small. And I was like, oh man, like that doesn't look like it was supposed to. And I remember her just being really quiet. And then she kind of turned to me and was like, I'm sorry, but I think there's a problem. Like I'm not sure exactly what's going on. We're going to do some blood work, but I can't find your baby's heartbeat. I was just silently sobbing, and Carlos, she kept talking, and my husband is so sweet. He's like, hey, can you give her a second? Because I was just silently sitting there. I couldn't even like say a word or breathe because I felt like in one moment, my whole world just crashed down on me. So then we go on, our baby, obviously it was a little boy. He was not going to be with us. So I had my DNC, we did the surgery. And that was pretty traumatizing. There was this woman who was our nurse and she was an angel. And I remember her putting her hand on my hand right before I was about to go in. And she said, honey, I've been through this. It gets better. And I think it was like her who like, I don't know that I could have even emotionally made it through that time, but I remember that woman. Like, I don't even remember her name, sadly. I was such a mess that day, but her words meant a lot to me because I thought to myself, man, if she can get through it, like I'm going to get through it. It's going to be okay. Move forward a few months. We decide, okay, we're going to try again. Maybe this was a fluke and it'll be better the next time. So we decided to start trying, and I take a pregnancy test on Mother's Day, and I figure out I'm pregnant. And I was like, oh, redemption moment for me. I'm like, how special. I am getting my child on Mother's Day. 2 weeks later, Carlos got hit in the head with a comebacker during a rehab assignment in Charlotte, North Carolina. And he spent the whole, like that afternoon in the ER. We go back to the hotel and I miscarry in the hotel. So then we spend the night in the ER, making sure that, I naturally miscarried that child. And so just making sure that like I was okay and, kind of deciding what we were going to do moving forward. But I was at such a low, um, but I knew in that moment I was going to do whatever it took, and I would spend whatever we had to have a family. And that's when I started going to fertility specialists and holistic doctors, and I'm getting all these. At one point, I had an appointment. They took 32 vials of blood, trying to figure out what was wrong with me. There were little things they found here and there, but that whole process, I never had the burden of worrying if we could afford to have a child. We were very blessed in that aspect of our lives. I knew like I could do whatever it took. And, a lot of the doctors that I've worked with these nonprofits, they all tell me, I can pretty much give anyone a family. It's the financial barriers that are stopping people because it is so expensive and it is considered, this elective choice as if you have a choice to have infertility or not, and you don't. So that's another part of the advocacy, a whole thing that I'm very passionate about is, insurance companies, stepping up and doing their part. But, I think it's my job to use what we have gone through to try to help other people because, after that second miscarriage, I had some things done. I tweaked some things in my lifestyle and I got pregnant with our daughter. I think it was 2 days before I was set to start the IVF experience with our doctor in Chicago. So I'm so blessed that that was the case for us, but it's really not the case for everybody. And their journey, is a very long, emotional, turbulent journey that you have to really calculate, how can we afford this? Is this, can we afford to pay for this and afford to provide for a child? Like those are very real questions people have to ask themselves. And so for Carlos and I, it's just being the people to give other people their Willow. And, Willow is our daughter who we had after our miscarriages. And, she's named after a willow tree, which is just like the most rooted, strong, and just held on and gives, has given us so much hope. And then we were blessed with 2 more children. So my children are my world, and I just cannot imagine a world without them. And I just hate that there are people who have to experience life not because of their choice, but because of their financial situation. And, that's why we're so passionate about this. This is why, I had to find a way to help.
Awesome. Take me back to like the beginning of the journey. When you first realized that it's not going to be as easy as you thought it would be to start a family, where were you? When did that come to your realization that this is going to be a difficult path for you and Carlos?
Yeah.
And, given this schedule that you guys have, what hardships did you face trying to balance everything?
Well, ironically, it was almost like an ebb and flow of his career as well. So he was going through a lot, even without our personal life. But I think the biggest thing for him and me was probably that second time we were sitting in the ER. And this is like a little bit of like a graphic story, but I think we're so desensitized to a lot of things that women go through because we don't talk about them. And I remember sitting in the ER and I was bleeding so badly from my miscarriage that it was like running down my legs. Carlos was like, what do we do? Like no one felt that it was an urgent matter. And I just remember sitting there
in the ER.
In the ER. And I was sitting in the waiting room and Carlos walks up to the lady and is like, my wife is bleeding like, everywhere. Like, I need you guys to do something for her other than us wait here for you to like have a moment. And so they finally did. They got me back and it was just very traumatic. And I think that was when I realized Like this isn't going to be easy, and this isn't going to be fun. This isn't going to be this fairy tale moment of like, oh, we get married and we have this, this picture perfect life and everything is just roses and butterflies. It wasn't. And it was far from that for me, because I felt like a failure as a wife. There are so many moments in my life where I am so in love with my husband and I think he is just the perfect person. But I think a lot of times I'm like people want to tell you like you're not good enough for them because of their status, because of the things they do. And for me, I thought to myself, I had left so much of my identity behind to support him in his career. And I knew a big part of my identity would be wrapped into being a mother. And the thought of not being a mom and like not giving him the family that he thought he would always have rocked my world, maybe more so than a lot of things. So it was all encompassing of a lot of different emotions. But I think sitting in that hospital and like no one cared in that moment and felt like it wasn't a big deal. But to me, I was losing my child and I was losing my hope of being a mom in that moment. And it was very real sitting there and no one cared. And so it's like, I just want women to like hear another woman tell them like what you're going through is traumatic. And like, you need to lean on people who understand to like feel supported, if that makes sense.
So what year was this, and where were you guys? Were you guys in Chicago at that time, or is that when you were in San Francisco?
Yes, this was like 2017, 2018. Like all of this was going down. We were, yeah, in Chicago pretty much. He was rehabbing that second miscarriage I had. He was rehabbing in Charlotte.
Okay. So where did you feel that you were supported the most when it came from like your family and then the medical professionals that you reached out? Obviously when that moment happened, you realized that you're going to need help.
Yeah.
What were the initial steps that you guys took together just from the onset?
So I was lucky enough to be surrounded by a lot of women who had actually been through it. And they were always my biggest source of strength. My best friend, Nicole, she's very quiet about her infertility that she had had previously, but she opened up to me and she was probably my biggest, just source of strength and companionship. And she really understood because for Carlos, I think a lot of his pain at that point in his life, because now it's a little different for him because he has children and he really understands like what we lost. But at that point, we didn't have kids, so it was more of he could see how much pain I was in, like emotionally, physically, and that was destroying him probably more than anything else in that time frame. And I just felt like I didn't want to put any more weight on him. And so it was like I would confide in the women who were like, hey, I've been there. Like I've been through what you're going through. There is a light at the end of the tunnel. Like we're gonna get you there. And that was, probably the most influential and important. I can name off a million people who I talked to, who I was like, why does no one talk about this? Like, why am I just now hearing all of my friends, and luckily I was surrounded by, we were younger, when Carlos came into the league, and I had a lot of older friends who already had families, and they're all telling me these stories about how they've lost children. And I'm like, how did I not know this about you? Like, how did I not know that this was a thing? And those women were instrumental, if not the reason I was able to like get through and get over that hump of just severe depression.
I spoke to several women who, when I told them that what we were doing, yeah, they came out and they told me their own journey. A lot of them also did share how it did affect their marriage and it did affect, their relationships with others where they saw other people with their families and some of them grew resentful or, it caused them to isolate to some of them told me. In the moments, the toughest moments. How did it affect your marriage? But more so also like just every relationship when people would give you the news that they were expecting and whatnot.
So, I attribute a lot of my just steadfast trust in my faith to why I didn't harbor a lot of anger. It was more the question of why. And I'm a big planner and I'm a big like let's do this, let's take it get it taken care of. So I had a plan and I knew that at some point if none of my plans worked, there's surrogacy. I knew there were so many options for us because of our
Mhm.
financial situation. And so I don't the fear of never being a mother, maybe of with my own eggs, like maybe it's something wrong with me. That fear was there and it was very real, but I was able, I think, to still be, you know, happy for my friends. I mean, I threw probably the hardest thing I had to do throughout that entire journey is when I was pregnant with our son and I miscarried him and I found out everything. It was pretty hard because I just imagined this little boy running around, right? I imagined me having this boy who adored me and we did things together and he got to go outside and go fishing with dad and he would hit a baseball and that was just ripped away. Like in an instant, that was all ripped from me. I got pregnant with my friend at the same time in of all this. And so I held her baby shower and now I've watched her son grow up. And there's times I send photos to Carlos and I'm like, this is what our little boy would have, he would have been this old. And those are the moments where I like get choked up and I'm like, wow, like that's what we lost. Like he, you know, he is gone. But never, I think, got to the point where I was resentful of anyone. It was more of just like just a harboring sadness, and I was like, I'm excited for you, but my own pain hurts. And so I was able to really compartmentalize that just for myself of like, I want to be happy for them and I want to, but I want to be sad for me too. And that was kind of where I was at.
Um, yeah, that's a lot of strength that you're blessed to have, and obviously your faith that endured through those hard times. You've spoken to a lot of women with regarding their own stories. Can you talk about the mental health journey that comes hand in hand with dealing with infertility and often failing, and what that does to you?
Yeah. So the biggest thing when it came to the mental health aspect of this, Carlos and I have actually worked with a company called the Happiness Project. And I just love everything they stand for because they're so pro mental health. And I think right now we live in a society where it's just very important to keep check on your mental health and keep check on just how you feel and just trying to, do things that bring you happiness. Uh, During that time, I spent a lot of my energy and my time with my friends. We would do dinners or we would just go get Chick-fil-A. I remember my girlfriend, I think maybe twice a week, I would go downtown Chicago. We would go to Chick-fil-A and we would go to a game. And she had been through it. And that's the thing. Whenever I got upset, angry, I could talk to her and she didn't have to talk back. And I think she knew she didn't have to say anything. She just needed to listen to me. And I think when you go through it, you have this ability to listen to someone talk about their journey. And you just know the things to say and not to say because you've been there. It's not there's no like, oh, like you're gonna be fine. Like it's gonna be fine. And like when someone says that to you and you're like, you have no clue what I'm going through. And like they mean it in a genuine way, but that genuine you're going to be fine feels like a punch in the face of like you're inconsiderate, you don't understand what I'm going through, and you're not helping my mental health right now. I need you to sit there and listen to what I'm saying because I'm going to be selfish for 5 seconds and talk about my feelings, and I need you to just say it's going to be okay. I've been there. And that's where it's just like having the people around you who are a support system who have been through it. That is just the biggest thing for me. And that's what I want to be for like for women in general. That's why fertility awareness, being proactive instead of reactive, by being outspoken is so important to me, because it's like there are women out there who feel isolated. They feel alone. They don't know who to talk to about it.
One of the things that we spoke about, how like my sobriety journey was very similar in the beginning, where you feel alone and you feel like you can't relate to people who haven't gone through it. And that's really what drew me towards your passion and your transparency with your story. Throughout my journey, that was the same thing, where I needed the support of other people who were going through the same thing, who had been there before, to take from their strength, which is great to see you doing with people with similar journeys as yourself and Carlos's. Tell me about the work that you did in Chicago with the nonprofits.
Yeah, so I work with the Chicago Coalition for Family Building. We got to work with Nike. We made a hat. It had tally marks on the side, and the 1 and 8 to represent the 1 and 8 couples that are struggling with infertility. We raised funds to give them a grant to give to a family struggling with IVF. And that to me was probably the start of realizing I had a passion for this space. It was realizing like, hey, you're going to do something that's going to give someone the hope to have a family. Like at the end of this, there's a chance that someone holds a baby who never could have held a baby, because you're taking the effort to make a difference. And like that's where my love of all of this began. I didn't go on to have my children. Life got a little crazy. We were able to sign with the New York Yankees, and I found the Nest Egg Foundation. And so I'm now on the board for the Nest Egg. I absolutely love everyone on that board. They are all just, their lives in a lot of ways revolve around infertility. Mark is a doctor. Dana's had IVF 4 times. And so it's just seeing their passion and love for, the same passion I have has been amazing. And it has been such, honestly, a whirlwind 6 months since I got in contact with them and decided to come on board. And there's just so many great things in the works. And that's what I'm really, really excited about for everybody in New York and Connecticut. It's really going to be something special.
Yes, I do want to congratulate you on joining their board as executive director of advocacy and impact. What was the feeling like when when they told you they wanted you to join the board? Obviously, I've spoken to Dana a couple of times. What was your first meeting with Dana like? I know when I spoke with her, it was nothing but just a plethora of knowledge and a plethora of passion. Tell me about your first experience with her, and how it feels to just be in a position with a great group of people,
Yes.
with one mission.
I had emailed them just that I was interested in possibly giving a grant away through their nonprofit. It really wasn't much more than that, but then we jumped on a Zoom call, and I mean, there were tears and laughter, and it was just like I had found a group of people who kind of understood what I was trying to do, and like understood why the mission was so important to me. And I'm like, these people are amazing. I'm like, these people are just, they're so diverse in their backgrounds of the fertility space, but they all have the same passion. Like they all have that same goal and drive to make a difference. And so just them seeing such value in me, I think anytime someone, kind of, what you have been to me, when someone looks at you and says like, hey, like everything you're saying to me it's really impactful, and it needs to be shared. And it's like, I know, but I like, sometimes I feel like everyone needs that person to be like, hey, like let's make this into something. Let's try to reach women. Let's try to make a difference. And that's what's been really special. Like since that first phone call on, it's been awesome.
That's awesome. You said that they had a very deep, diverse background. I know Mark is really the medical side. I believe Amy is the holistic side.
Yeah, she's
Um,
an acupuncturist. Like, it's just amazing to me how they have such a phenomenal board because everyone is just in different spaces. And it makes the board so well rounded that it's just a very unique foundation. I think everyone is just there because they love the fertility space and they want to make a difference because their daily lives are impacted by it. Every day you see for Amy, she works at a Loom Fertility and she sees these women coming in doing acupuncture, trying to, help their chances with fertility and talking with them. And Mark every day is dealing with people, like he's an IVF doctor. Like that's his reality every day. And he's watching people pour their hearts and souls into trying to become parents. And it's just very special. It's a very special group.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the Willow Grant.
Yeah.
So this is your and Carlos's initiative.
Yeah.
When did you first have the idea for the Willow Grant, and who exactly are you trying to help with it?
Yeah, Carlos and I obviously we had done our work in Chicago and we really enjoyed that. And Carlos signed with the Yankees and we both kind of sat down and said, what can we do to make a difference in people's lives? Like a true impact on society where we're going to leave a mark, on people's lives, that we're going to do something good. And it always kind of has come back to infertility. Like our kids are our world and he's the best dad. And so it's one of those spaces where I think, we're trying to help families who have essentially a similar story to us. It's families who are suffering reoccurring pregnancy loss and just cannot get a pregnancy to stick. That's, whether we had some chromosomal errors. There's so many components to that, but just helping those people get into a space where maybe they have a better chance, but they can't have that chance if they don't have the funds. And so that's our goal. That's our drive. I think every day when we talk about it, that drive is obviously like, I want someone to hold their baby and like look at us and say like, thank you for believing in us. Like, thank you for being the hope that we didn't have. That's what I want in all of this. And I want to be able to just be a safe space for women to say like, I contacted her and she listened to my story and she gave me words of encouragement. Like that's what I want my purpose to be. I truly just want to help people.
That's awesome. Let's talk about Willow. When Willow was born, what was that feeling like?
I think anyone who's gone through miscarriages and I have friends who've had stillborn babies, I think anyone will tell you until they're in your arms and you're holding them and they're crying, I don't know that you ever believe you're going to have a baby. I always said that to Carlos too. Like we were going to every ultrasound and she was healthy and her heart was beating. And I'm like, you just don't understand. I mean, Carlos, once you're in the infertility space, like then you start, there's some stories and you're like, I'm not at peace until I'm holding her. And let's be honest, even every day of my life, I'm like a helicopter parent who's like, like don't get a bruise, don't get a bruise, don't get a cut. Okay. But I think that, she is the absolute light of the world to me. And she is so special because I just prayed and prayed and prayed and prayed for her. And so everyone coins the term like rainbow baby. And she just really is a rainbow. Like she's our only daughter. We have a daughter and two sons. So she's like the princess of the house and runs the joint. And I just think to myself every day when she's saying funny things, like there is no person on earth who shouldn't get to do this. Like there is no person who, because of financial means, shouldn't get to have a Willow and spend every day of their life laughing at dancing, laughing at jokes. She's like 4 going on 14. And it's just so special to be a parent to Willow. And so I look at her and I think that's another like huge driving factor for us. It's just like, I want everyone to get to be a parent. I'm going through this with my sister. My sister's about to start fertility treatment as well. I think as soon as I got out of this space and I felt like a little bit of that weight come off of me, now I'm going through it with my little sister. And it's like, no one should have to go through this. but a lot of people do. And so it's, you know, for me, it's like I have the opportunity to make a difference in this space, you know, and that's what we want to do.
So having, going through it with your sister, what advice do you give to her? And obviously not just to her, but to all women going through it.
I
Because
think a lot of times the best advice is like no advice. I think unless someone is actively seeking your advice in the sense of like, hey, what tests did you do? What supplements did you take? Like what helped you on a bad day? I think sometimes just listening, being that support to say, hey, if you need anything, I'm here. If you want to go to lunch, I'm here. If you want, hey, can I send you a coffee? Like, hey, how's your day going? It's those little things that make a difference for people in the infertility space. It's not, oh, you're so young, like it's going to be fine. Like, no one wants to hear that. Like, internally, like, yes, do you think that? Like, I hope so. You're like, I hope I'm young and it's going to be okay and whatever. But we live in a society now where people are making sure they're financially stable, that they're in a place in space to bring a child into the world where they're going to be loved and nurtured. And I think that's so commendable. But when we're doing that and we're neglecting the fact that women's health is so reactive and not proactive, you then start to see a lot of issues because we're waiting longer to have children. And as you wait, you have early diminishing ovarian reserve, for example. It's very common now among young adults. And that's an easy at-home test that you can take to check things like that. But it's just not talked about. You know, I always give the terminology, you're born with the eyes in your head. You're born with the teeth in your mouth. We get those checked all the time.
Yep.
We're born with the eggs that we have as women. But for some reason, we are in a headspace that until there's a problem, we don't need to address anything. And I just think that that's the rhetoric that needs to be changed and needs to be promoted is, hey, let's be proactive. If you think you want to have a baby one day, let's just get that ball rolling and know that you have control, that you have options, that you're setting yourself up for success in that space of your life the same way you do every other aspect of your life.
Listen, I love the name of the Willow Grant. I love the motto, rooted in hope. I love that you named your daughter Willow because you guys are the hopeful roots that born her. I'm super excited to begin this journey on the 25th of January. People are going to be able to meet you and the board. What are you most looking forward to?
I think it's just being in a space of people who collectively care about what you care about. I think it's so cool to do events like this because everyone has this heart for giving back. Like that's why people come. That's why they're there. It's like you come because you're the type of person who wants to make a difference, who wants to make an impact. You may not have time to start a nonprofit or be a part of a foundation, but it's like, this is important to me and I want to be a part of it. And those are like, I'm so thankful for all of those people, even who have already been like, I want to be on board. I want to be a part of this. Like this has affected my life or my sister's life or my aunt's life. And they feel, they felt the weight of infertility affect their family and their life. And so they're ready to just jump on board with us and just make a difference. So it's like meeting everybody face to face and just getting to, share stories, the good and the bad ones, and that's what I'm probably most excited for.
Awesome. I'm so excited to be with you on this journey. You and Carlos have just been amazing, just getting to know you guys. And in regards to Dana and the Nest Egg Foundation, they couldn't have been more just supportive and just greater partners. So I'm excited about January 25th. And, there's going to be plenty more of this discussion. We hope to include Dana in a conversation. And thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.